Well, hello, friends. Today we are talking about the book of Ecclesiastes. This was a couple of days of reading in our read through the Bible plan, and I'm not going to do a systematic kind of treatment of Ecclesiastes. I'm not sure about you, but this is one of the more challenging books for me. There's some kind of interpretive choices that you kind of have to make as far as how you view the author's perspective here on life, etc. And but the book of Ecclesiastes is one that's been really people have found really fascinating at times. It kind of is humbling. It reminds us of our we don't know as much as we would maybe like to know sometimes. Our human finitude, maybe, sort of we could say. It's also interesting to think about this book as well as others in the grand scope of the Bible. And I believe that as we do that, as we think particularly of reading it back from in terms of the New Testament and Jesus, we'll find that some things that the book of Ecclesiastes presents, this human author, that there's revelation yet to come, and there's things that we'll understand that are different now because of the further revelation that we have as the scripture kind of goes on. But at this kind of moment in time, this is really an interesting and thoughtful reflection. Let me just make a couple comments about the very beginning. I want to spend a minute or two in chapter 5, just because I find, again, it's all interesting. I'm just kind of picking and choosing a couple things to talk about here, and then just a second about the end. So Ecclesiastes begins the words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. The author here is called the teacher, is the translation of the Hebrew word. We're told that he's a Davidic king. Often this is associated with Solomon for several different reasons. It's fascinating that it doesn't say Solomon. So, make of that what you will or won't, whether it's intended to be specifically attached to that particular person, or just being maybe more generally the idea of somebody who kind of has it all and yet still kind of finds the limitations of the human life. The reasons why Solomon is typically associated with this are those clues at the beginning, but also his wisdom that's pointed out later in chapter 1 of how wise he was, and yet. So that's a couple of the reasons that are there. So it begins that way. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem, meaningless, or I think in the KJV, vanity, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. So basically, part of what he'll do throughout this book is go through a lot of the kind of pursuits of the human life, pursuits after wisdom, pursuit after pleasure, hard work, getting money and power and those kind of things. And ultimately, one of the questions he'll ask is, what does that get you in the end? In the end, everyone dies is one of the kind of common themes here. And everything that you work for may be used poorly by the next generation, which is kind of really, really interesting. So everything that you work for, that you work to kind of accumulate and acquire, may ultimately be for naught, which connects pretty well to Jesus's admonitions of store up your treasures in heaven. Of course, as we've been tracking, the what's said about life after death is still not very robust. Here, the author of the book of Ecclesiastes is not confidently looking forward to the resurrection, or not confidently looking forward to a robust life in the presence of God afterwards. There's maybe some clues, but again, not the robust hope that we find as the story will sort of continue on. Verse 3, chapter 1. What do people gain from all their labors from which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go. The sun rises, the sun sets. All things are wearisome, he says. And there's this common phrase, comes up in verse 9 and several other places. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun, meaning under the sun means life on earth, right under the sun. And so, everything is the same for each generation, which there again, from the big picture of the biblical narrative, let's ask the question, is that true? Is it true that there's nothing new under the sun? Well, perhaps in his day, that's true. But from our perspective today, that's not true. Because what's new? Well, the eternal Son of God became human. That's something new under the sun. He who was truly dead has been resurrected from the dead, ascended to the right hand of God, right? All these things that are these new covenant realities are new things under the sun. So from that perspective, the book of Ecclesiastes is that, some aspects of it are, in perspective, not the current total truth. And yet, so much of that reality is the same, and that we ought to be humble about our lives. And so, from the salvation history point of view, there is something new under the sun. And our lives yet are, there's differences with technology and whatnot, but largely kind of the shape of human life is the same as it was in the generation before us, and perhaps in the generation that's to come. So what do you guys think about Ecclesiastes? What are your thoughts? Do you find it comforting, challenging, frustrating? How are you processing Ecclesiastes if you've read it either now in our read through the Bible, or if you've read it, spent some time with it in the past? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or if you have a favorite, is there a favorite thing in Ecclesiastes for you, a favorite saying of the teacher, or maybe a frustrating or confusing saying in Ecclesiastes? I'd be happy to hear your thoughts there on that. Chapter 5 is interesting, and for a couple different ways. At the beginning, it talks about how we approach God. Just interesting, I think, right? Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. That's the temple, right? Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. So this posture of humility, right, of wanting to learn and listen from God. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart. Do not to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth. So let your words be few, right? Stay humble. And you recognize is that God has knowledge that we don't. What do we know? We know what's been revealed to us. And some things have been revealed to us by this point in the biblical story, but a lot of things are yet to be known to us in this narrative of Scripture. When you make a vow, do it. Don't make a vow. It's better not to make one than do it not fulfill it. We saw a lot about vows in like Leviticus, right? And as we track forward from Leviticus to this to Jesus, he'll say, vows, don't don't make these oaths. These oaths. You don't have to do that. Ecclesiastes and money is really interesting, and I think helpful and wise. Look at this in chapter 5, still verse 10. Whoever loves money never has enough. Remember, we'll see in when Paul writes to Timothy, the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself, right? But the love of money. Whoever loves money, the teacher of Ecclesiastes says, never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income, right? There's always more. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. But the sleep of a laborer is sweet. They eat little or much, but as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. So this author is someone who is wealthy and kind of doesn't have to labor for his daily bread. He seems to have the perspective that it's better to be an average guy who's not sitting back in the lap of luxury, kind of just contemplating the intricacies of life. It's better to kind of get your hands dirty, um, do meaningful work and find joy in your everyday life. This is good news for us. This is a good word for us, right? Who have jobs that maybe some of us feel like aren't, super duper important or fulfilling. I kind of go and sit in a cubicle, or I work in a factory or drive a forklift or something like that. And it's hard to maybe see how the world's a better place because of what I do. That, regular work is a good thing. It's meaningful to labor, to work with your hands, to come home and have a good meal and get a good night of rest. That's good. What is wealth? What does extreme wealth really get you in the end? Is part of what the teacher will ask in the Book of Ecclesiastes, right? Still in chapter 5, verse 15. Everyone comes naked from their mother's womb, and as everyone comes, so they depart. They take nothing from their toil that they can carry with their hands. Right. So, working to acquire and accumulate and whatever else at the end of life, what does it get you? We have a common expression that we kind of derive from this and other, I think, places. You can't take it with you. So it's good to work and have enough. Have good food, have whatever, but you don't have to go crazy. This is interesting. Okay, so the end of chapter 5. Let me read this paragraph, verse 18 and following. This I observe to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them, for this is their lot. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil. This is the gift of God. They seldom reflect on the days of their lives because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. So, maybe the idea of being satisfied, being content with what you have in life, it is a gift from God, he says. This kind of malcontent that the author, seems to feel is what's troubling him, like that he's not just kind of satisfied in the everyday of life. He wants to figure it out, but kind of can't, and so it all feels like meaninglessness for him, which is really interesting stuff. So just a second about the end of Ecclesiastes. The actual words of the voice of the teacher end with that refrain, meaningless, meaningless, or vanity of vanity, says the teacher, everything is meaningless. Then at the end, there's an epilogue that somebody else adds on, not the voice of the author of most of the content here, this Davidic king teacher, but someone else. He says, not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He searched to find the right words, and so this person obviously has a positive view of the teacher, but it concludes the whole book in this way, which I think is an appropriate way for us to conclude our few minutes together with this. Verse 13. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So at the end of all of the ponderings and the thinking and whatever else, this person who writes this epilogue, this end of the book, says, at the end of the day, fear God and keep his commandments. Right. So fear God, keep his commandments, work hard, love your family, enjoy your food, get good sleep. maybe sometimes if life feels complicated or you're feeling like, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out the meaning of this, that, and the other thing. Maybe some of the lesson is just, get busy doing your daily thing. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So, all right. I will hopefully catch you tomorrow or the next day with Song of Songs. Here we go. Okay. Have a great day.